Hello and a warm welcome to Top Story. She was supposed to lead a mass procession against the Pakistani president. Instead, opposition leader Benazir Bhutto is under house arrest in the eastern city of Lahore. Her residence surrounded by barbed wire and barricades. Her party insists the so-called Long March to Islamabad will go ahead. Bhutto's allies plan to drive nearly 300 kilometers to the capital to demand that Pervez Musharraf suspend emergency rule, quit as army chief, and free detained activists. The fresh showdown has done nothing to cool Western anger over the crisis, nor Washington's fear that a carefully engineered power-sharing deal between Bhutto and Musharraf is now as good as dead. I'm joined now by Zaid Hussain, a freelance journalist in Islamabad. Mr. Hussain, thank you very much indeed for being with us on Top Story this morning. First of all, the news this morning, Benazir Bhutto has called on President Musharraf to step down altogether. Should we take this at face value, or do they still need each other in spite of everything?
Well, actually, it shows that the increasing toughening stance of Benazir Bhutto against General Musharraf. And it seems that whatever talks were going on between the two have finally come to an end. And this is the first time she has demanded that General Musharraf should quit as president. Earlier, she was just talking about holding a free and fair election, and he should quit the army. But this is the first time she has made this statement that he should also quit as president, and I think it's a very significant development.
So this is a real turning point in the crisis then?
Well, actually, that shows that crisis has intensified. General Musharraf last week had announced the election date, hoping that it would calm down the anger at home and also quieten the growing international pressure. But it has not happened. In fact, actually, it has further intensified the situation and worsened the political crisis, and it has also united the opposition across the spectrum, because no political party or no opposition political party is prepared to take part in an election being held under emergency, and when thousands of political activists are also in jail. So now Ms. Bhutto also being detained, things are getting worse for General Musharraf.
Do you think there's any real cause for unity for the opposition, though? Surely they're only united by opposition to President Musharraf. I mean, politically, they don't have much in common. So how could that play in this election campaign?
Well, actually, they might not be united as far as their programs are concerned, but at least they are united on one point, that Musharraf should go. And that is basically shows that Musharraf is facing the growing challenge. It's no more some political party opposing him, and he was hoping that a power-sharing deal with Benazir Bhutto will at least divide the opposition. But it seems that it has not worked. And they might not be on one platform, but they definitely agree on one point, that Musharraf should quit power as soon as possible.
Mr. Hussain, if I could just ask you to speculate for a moment, if the pressure does get too much, if Musharraf does quit, what would happen next?
Well, it's very clear that it's becoming much more an untenable situation for General Musharraf, and I don't see any hope of him tagging along or basically remaining in power. What I see is that the army must be also feeling the heat. His commander must be concerned about the developing situation, and also must have realized how the opposition is growing. And I think probably the time might come that he might be advised to step down, and that is coming very close.
Do you think he would then make a concession to at least become a civilian president? That would allay the concerns, at least in the Western world.
Well, I don't think so, because he has already given a pledge that he will quit as army chief as soon as he takes oath for the second term, and being validated by his newly constructed Supreme Court. But basically the major issue at this point is the imposition of a state of emergency. It's not just a state of emergency, it's practically martial law. And the concern of the political parties have been added by a new amendment in Army Act, which has given Army more sweeping power to arrest even civilians and try them in the military courts. So basically, on the one hand, General Musharraf is talking about returning the country to a civilian rule and democracy, but on the other hand, he is giving more sweeping power to the army. So basically, it's not return to democracy. It's basically strengthening in the hands of the military. So in this situation, I think the problem is the people are not going to accept that, and it also the concern of the international community remains there. And in fact, actually, he is coming under increasing pressure from the international community as well. They are not actually their concern has not calmed down because of the announcement of a firm election date. Now, the more pressure is coming that he should lift a state of emergency, or what I call martial law. But once he does that, he will become much weaker. So this is basically a catch-22 situation for him. He is basically trying to survive power or struggling to remain in power through this emergency rule, but on the other hand, it has also intensified the pressure on him. So if he takes off, lift the emergency, but he will become a lame duck president. So in a way, actually, the choices are very limited for him at this point, and he should see the writing on the wall that he cannot survive in power for long.
One of the key wishes of the international community is a power-sharing deal between Bhutto and Musharraf. Does that have any future now? Briefly, if you could.
I don't think it's any future. Whatever hope was there has ended last night when Benazir Bhutto announced that she will not work with Musharraf in any capacity and wanted him to quit power.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ziad Hussain from Islamabad, a freelance journalist, talking to me about the crisis in Pakistan and the latest turn with Benazir Bhutto, the opposition leader, calling on General Musharraf to step down, to quit as president altogether. Do join me at the same time for another edition of Top Story tomorrow.